ways to mount things on the lathe. And it's important whenever you mount something on the lathe, make sure it is secure so it's not going to come loose and have problems with that or fly across the room or boards flying off of glued up pieces. So, there's lots and lots of different ways. I'm just going to start kind of with the basic one and we'll go from there. So when I did this up in Palm Beach, they have a bigger time slot and it was like 2 hours and 15 minutes. So I kind of cut it down a bit, quite a bit. And the most basic way to mount on the lathe is between centers. We have a spur drive with no moving parts. It goes in the headstock, and it's good to clean the chips out. It's a plastic tool with swirls on it. You can work them in and clean up the #2 Morse tapers. Usually your lathe comes with a spur drive, not this one, and a live center which spins. So the spur drive goes in here. You mount your piece of wood where you've marked the center or not, and bring up your tailstock. And most of the small lathes, and certainly in the past, they came with this live center, which is my least favorite one. This ring on here is just so big, and this is so close to that trying to get in to finish up the bottom of your piece or something, or work close in here, it's just kind of limiting. Like the one-way style one, this is one way, that's a brand, and the other lathes come with them. And they have a bunch of different heads on here. I never put the point in here. I use it exclusively like that. And if you're doing heavier stuff, you need one with a point that goes in the wood. I use this mainly when I'm repositioning something. If I have it on the lathe and I'm trying to true it up, without that point, I can move it any direction I want, without of an inch even, to true up the wood spinning on the lathe. And with the point, it's going to want to go back into that same hole if you're doing a very minute adjustment. So this is a variety of different spur drives and live centers. This live center comes with it's a kit. Craft Supply sells it. There's like 8 different heads you can put in here. And again, the head I have on here is the one without the point in it. I have a bunch of these around. They cost like 20 bucks in Craft Supply. These are really good centers. And this is magnetic, and it's full of wood chips for some reason. And you can change the heads to do different things. This is a dead center. There's no teeth on it. This goes in the headstock, and originally they had one similar on the tailstock, and they would just wax the wood, and the wood would spin, creating friction on this side especially, and it usually burned just so much, and then it would stop burning. But this is a good one to learn your more intricate tools, like the skew and your spindle gouge and that for the fine detail work. Because when you get a catch, this just spins, your wood stops. You don't take a big chunk out of your wood or knock it off the lathe. There's another variety of centers here. Some of them have a springy point. The Stebbs style center. The Stebbs ones are like over 60 bucks, and there's a knockoff which is like 25 or something. They're just as good. This has the springy point center in there, which is very beneficial. There are other ones where you can actually put them in the chuck. This is a spur drive you put in the chuck, and it has the springy center also. And you round your wood out, put your tenon on, take this out, put it right in the chuck, your piece of wood. You don't have to pop that thing out of the headstock. You can just go right with it. This is a big bite by One Way. It's made to go in the chuck. It goes down in here and you close the jaws on it. this is made to fit the one-way chucks, so you get it down inside, and if you're doing a great big block that's, especially an off-center one, you take and put this on there and pound it in with a hammer. Some of my centers I've had for about 20 years. I use a hammer to beat them in the wood because I want it in there. People say, don't do that, only use a mallet. If once a year I mushroom this out a little bit where it doesn't catch right, and I have to go and just grind the tiniest bit off maybe once a year, that's no big deal. So get them in the wood solid. If you're doing bigger stuff, medium size to bigger, I like this 2-prong center. This is my favorite center from anything like that big and up. Because this thing digs down in the wood deep and it bites, and rarely ever does it spin out in the wood. The little 4-prong ones, they'll spin out quite a lot. And see, even these Stebbs ones with all these teeth, they tend to spin a lot. So you have to keep tailstock pressure on here. So we'll pass some of these around. I'm going to keep one of these just to show you something with it. Okay, I got another one right here. So we'll throw some of these in here. That one I'll just have to sit. And like this one here, the end of this is 3/8. And when I used to do a lot of bottle stoppers, I would take my bottle stopper blank, drill a 3/8 hole in it, about a 1/2 inch deep, and you can see this is more than a 1/2 inch, and I would just pound that into the center. That would drive my bottle stopper. Put the tail stuck up on the other end. They work really good. I have a 1/2 inch size and a 3/8 size I use. Let's get this one out of here. Put my knockout bar.
Lee,
yes, sir.
Are you a proponent of drilling a recess for your
yeah, that's a really good point. If you're doing like a big piece, natural edge with the bark, if you can take a Forstner bit and drill a hole down into it through the bark and all the soft junk, and then put your spur drive in there on that flat drill spot, it holds so much better. Okay, I'm going to put a stub center in here and just mount this up. Well, I have a different piece with the center spot. Okay, and you can go ahead and use a center finder and find the exact middle of your piece of wood. You don't have to do that. Like this nicely spalted wood, if it has a plain side, I want to move the center over here to cut away the plane, and it just makes the piece a little more interesting. And you don't always need to pop a center hole, but it is helpful. So put that in there. And up in Port St. Lucie on Craigslist, there's the Jet 12-inch, the newer version. Somebody's selling for 400 bucks. So, okay, so I put this on. The spring point is holding it in place, and tighten it up. You need to keep this tight. Now, I rarely lock this unless I turn it on and the spindle here is shaking a little bit. That's about the only time I do lock this. Otherwise, I keep it open because I need to keep tightening this down. Now, one of the things about the stub center is you can be turning and check your process. you can stop it like that, tighten it right back up and keep going. If you're doing multiple pieces, like a whole bunch of things, I do a lot of spindle work. I can come in, put that there, slowly bring it up, tighten it, pick up the tool, keep going. You don't even have to shut the lathe off. Now if you get a little heavy cutting on there, this will start to spin. And I don't know if you can see it in the camera, these teeth are full of wood. And I just cleaned them out. So this is medium light duty for these centers. And again, if you're doing something larger and more heavy, you need a different style of center. Okay, now I want to talk about chucks some. But let me just show you the one-way center here. I've had this one for over 20 years, never had a problem with it. It gets heavy use. And you can unscrew that and change the bearing, but this comes with, you get this great big cone you can put on that way or this way for mounting various things in various ways. You get this large point, which also screws on here. You can custom make ends that go on here. I have a tap where I can drill a hole and tap things to screw them on here. To change the point, you find the hole once you have it in the tailstock, and then just that locks it, and you go ahead and screw the piece on. This is the center that comes with it. And Cindy Drozda, famous lady wood turner, she makes these little points centers. She does a lot of very delicate work. So she made these to go in there and hold her really tiny spindle things. And I've got a couple of them in here. This is also an adapter that my live center can be in here, and I can screw this on, and then I can screw a chuck on over on this side. Now where would that come in beneficial? If I'm doing something like, this is a split turning. These are two separate pieces of wood not glued together. I did one, it's at the Palms Hotel down on Miami Beach. The blank was 19 inches and 26 inches long. And I put a big faceplate on both sides across the joint. This company wanted to have a split. It's on the front counter of that hotel. They're 25 tall, and the biggest bead on it was 18 in diameter. And they wanted me just to turn this. They were going to bring me this monster blank, 19 by 19 by that, out of maple. And it was a glue up. And again, it was a bad glue up job because 4 times the pieces came off and I had to put them back on. And I charged them extra for that. But I screwed this end onto the headstock, and the other side was screwed on to this. So it was very secure. And doing that piece, I wrapped stretch wrap all around here, and I turned half of it with the faceplate still on. And then I unwrapped it, and I wrapped the part I turned with stretch wrap. And then I came over here and turned the other half. And I set it on the floor, took the faceplates off, boom, it came apart in 2 pieces. Now if you're doing that, it was a couple years ago, I was doing one, it was only about this big. And the company wanted to do the same. I said, no, I'll do it in 2 pieces, so it's already, you just put it on that credenza you're making. And I screwed a block of wood on both ends, but it was just straight grain pine, and I lined up the grain on the wood with this. And I got about 26 seconds into it, and the wood piece broke and came apart, and I got 7 stitches right here. But I had a face shield on, wouldn't have happened. Or if my face would have been here instead of here, that wouldn't have happened. Or if I would have used plywood like I did when I got back from the medical center, that wouldn't have happened. That was a $250 job, and it cost me $300 for the stitches. So those kind of things happen. We'll pass this around so you can look at the things in there. And the pieces you make, like this was a cup chuck I made to do spheres. I had this on the one side and one on the other side, and there's the sphere in it that you can turn around.
1034.
Correct.
No, this is three-quarter 16. Three-quarter 16.
3/4
Three-quarter 16.
10. Yeah, I have a tap if anybody wants to borrow it. Now, chucks come in all different sizes and shapes. These are my two favorite chucks. Craft Supply sells these. These are Apprentice Mini Chuck. You get this in a box. You get 4 sets of jaws with it. This is the 1-inch jaw. There's a jaw that comes all the way out here. It's a 2-inch jaw. This is a 1/4-inch jaw. And there's a step jaw with 3 steps. In the center hole, you could put a toothpick in there, and it'll hold a toothpick. So these are really good. This chuck that was on the lathe is one of my least favorite. It's a Nova chuck. Every other chuck on the planet tightens to the right. Nova chucks tighten to the left. So if you have both, you have to remember or write on it. I got this nice goblet almost done. I'm going to do something. I'm going to check. Tighten it to the right, and it goes bing, and falls right here and breaks a lip. I've done that bunches of times. So, show this one on. There are scroll chucks where you need a lock or 2 levers to open and close it. Now, if you notice, this faceplate is different from the normal ones. This has a dovetail inside. You screw that on, and then you insert it into your chuck, turning it the right way. And then you open that up and tighten it, and it holds your faceplate right in the chuck. And when you're done with that, you take it off and go to town on it.
Where are those Nova chucks made?
Australia.
Australia.
That's why they're
Technitool.
That's why they,
I heard they changed them.
that's why they turn.
I'm not for sure, but it's the only one I've ever seen which tightens counterclockwise. I heard your toilets flush that way too. Okay, jaws come in every configuration and size. This is a Vic Mark chuck. The jaws are dovetailed. The inside slants in. So when you make your tenon, your recess, it must be slanted in the same as the jaw. You do not want to put a tenon in the chuck and have it touching the bottom. You want it up a little bit, matching the jaw profile. And the surface under here, you want on top of these jaws. If you can make it perfectly flat, that's great. Otherwise, undercut it so it's touching the outer edge of the jaw. That is your strongest holding power. Now, I had a problem with that when I started turning, and I was only getting 60% holding power instead of 100% chuck holding power. So it makes a difference. The one way, they have a straight jaw with a whole bunch of teeth inside here. And so you have to make a straight tenon. And again, you want it sitting on top or out here. They have shark jaws, they're called. They're about like this. If you're doing a lot of tall, thin bases, you want a big, long tenon on it. That way it holds really good. Anybody want me to pass around these heavy chucks? Okay, another way.
Lee, is there a better diameter to have your tenon in those chucks?
I've heard a bunch of different stories, but they say if your chuck is closed more, it's more of a circle, and you have more contact all the way around. If your chuck's open more, you'll have a divot here and a divot here if the chuck spans there, and the center is not touching the wood. So if you're doing bigger things and need a bigger tenon, get a chuck with bigger jaws. I mean, out at Ron's, there's a great big Vic Mark that Lou years ago bought for the lathe at demos. It's great big. We need one this size for demos. We don't have a huge one. And I have one like it at home made by One Lathe. So This one opens and closes quite a bit. It opens and opens and opens. I mean, these jaws could come out. It needs cleaning. And if your jaws are sticking, you can take it apart and clean it, or just put some acetone in a tub and stick it in there overnight and blow it out. It usually works really well. Oh, we didn't pass this one on, did we?
No.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I have an inventory of every piece here. Now, you got the side camera here? You can use the chuck without the jaws in it. The slides here are really good for grabbing things like a dowel or say a pen blank. You could stick that in here and tighten it with just there's a dowel here. And you can tighten it just like that. And that works perfectly well. It's almost absolutely true. I've done that several times over the years. There's been times when something like that was needed. If you have the smaller jaws, they work really well too. I'm not passing that around.
That's part of the show.
Yeah, and every different kind of chuck has their own different wrench. Like this has a little 1/4 inch or 6 millimeter square. This one has a much bigger one, and they're good to use. Now, who has put their chuck on and not been able to get it off?
Once.
Once?
I learned that.
Okay. You can go like that and that. Putting the wrench in here doesn't work. What I do is I lock the spindle if it has one. And then usually pick up a scraper, stick it in between the jaws, give it a pop. You can break it loose just like that. Works really well.
The reason I said once is, I don't know if you probably have heard it from you, but got in the habit of removing my chuck from the lathe or just loosening it. The same with the life center, because leave it overnight, put it too tight, a little, if you got humidity, you don't have air conditioning in your shop, it does make it hard to get them out sometimes.
Yeah.
Like,
Now, there's, yes?
I don't know if you have it, but with the chucks that the bigger chucks that we have in the shop, it comes with like this silver kind of pin.
Yeah.
And you can just put it right in the keyhole, and it helps give you leverage to get the chuck off.
Well,
We have them
that's
all over the shop. And
similar to a knockout bar, right?
Kind of, I mean,
Yeah.
it comes with the chuck, it fits beautifully in the hole.
I didn't see that. What brand are those chucks?
With the chucks.
Big marks.
Oh, yeah.
And they come with it, and they're kind of laying all over the shop, and nobody ever uses them, but they are very, very handy.
Yeah.
for
Now,
Getting your chuck off.
if you're doing a lot of pieces, bowls, hollow vessels, these are called coal jaws. They come with these little short buttons or pins, and somebody died and their wife gave me the whole shop, and they had these big ones in there. It's machined aluminum with the rubber thing. Those are great. And I like these synthetic line stoppers. They are great. They're just flexible enough to squeeze in and contour your piece. And
You have to drink the wine.
You have to drink the wine, right?
well, you can go to a bar. They usually have all kinds of wine corks.
I'll just put it in.
So on these coal jaws, it says, I think 800 RPMs max. And I've had them up to like 2,000. But even with these coal jaws, and you have a piece in here, and you squeeze it down, you still need to use your tailstop. Whatever we're doing, use this as much as possible until it's in your way and you're hollowing. Otherwise, this thing could come flying off of here. Larry, who used to come to my studio a lot, he used to be in the club, he had this really nice rosewood box, and he stuck it in there to cut the bottom off and turned the lathe on and just touched it, and it wing, and hit the wall over my desk.
Can you say again, when you use those, like the most opportunity to use those?
Well, bowls and hollow vessels mostly.
Removing the tenon?
Yeah, for cutting the bottom off.
Oh, okay.
Say like we have this bowl here, and the little tiny ones that come with it, if you have this on there, they're not even touching. This one will grab the side of it. Alternately, you could do it on the inside, pushing out, but
But how is that better or worse than jam chucking it?
it's,
Faster.
if you're doing a lot, the same size piece, you can do this, because usually there's a little bit variance in your jam chuck, and you have to do that and cut it. We're going into jam chucks next.
Okay. Sorry.
Now, if you're putting this inside and expanding it out, this bowl is fairly thin up here. You cannot put too much pressure or you're going to crack it and pop it open.
You're on
Oh,
camera.
we got security cameras. And just remember, anything we make can be remounted on the lathe. Yes, sir.
Quick question. We're talking about mounting the skinny, thin-walled balls.
Yeah,
Will it help to put tape on the outside of it?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought about it, I've never tried it.
Yeah, so pass this around, you can look at the different pieces. And I have a whole bunch of wine corks drilled out with the 6mm screws. And those screws cost me $1.25 a piece. If anybody wants a set, it's $10 because that's what the screws cost. So, you know, I'll donate a set to the club, but I'm not trying to make any money on it. These are $1.25 a piece to go in here. So
Does it not normally come with the?
they come with really short ones. These are much taller, and I use these almost exclusively. The little tiny ones, I hardly ever use those. I don't think I've ever used those.
Drink a lot of wine?
I used to.
Yep.
I found something a little tastier than wine. She's in the front row. And usually you have 8, you have to adjust these back and forth. You just unscrew them and then screw them in until they're hand tight. You don't need to crank down on them with the wrench. There you go. Okay, now there's a lot of specialty chucks and things you can do. Let me show you something else I do here. Anybody recognize that?
Yeah, that's one way sharpening.
I had this piece of channel aluminum, and I found it fits perfect in there. I have a wing nut and a thing, and I just tighten it down. Now I can put all the one-way attachments right here on my lathe. I've got a variable speed grinder now. I always put a towel down if I do that. And you can put the long drawbar in there. On the 10-inch lathe, you're limited by size, but Kenny Reza, who sells the CBN wheels, came up with this piece. Fits in here. Your grinding wheel or CBN wheel fits right on there like that. You just crank the nut down. And bring your live center up to the hole. And you turn it on and you unlock the launcher. I used to have a $1 jar in my studio for people that did that, to pay for a new valve. Now if you twist this around, you'll get it perfectly true. The CBN wheels run absolutely true on here. So now I can just take my tool, put my tool rest right up here. I think that piece does fit on the 10-inch lathe. So I can use all my one-way jigs on here. But you want to cover it to keep the grit off of it. See, I didn't tighten that nut all the way down either.
Pretty sharp idea.
Yeah, it's a really good system. Sharp idea. You know what the best part is? I taught him to turn, and he let me test a lot of the stuff out before he put it on the market.
That's good.
Now another way you can do that is with a faceplate or a chuck. Say what?
Who did you teach?
Kenny Reza. He sells the CBN wheels.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
this piece does the same thing. I have a 10-in that fits the grinding wheel. I usually line up the mark on the wheel with that, and then it runs true. And again, you bring the center up. And I used to carry this with me when I went to demonstrate because I didn't know what kind of, see, that's running almost absolutely true. And I could go ahead and sharpen my tools. And if you have a shop with limited space, it's just another option that you can do. Okay, what else do we got for the chuck? All right, so let's say I have a long spindle, which I've done a lot of them, and they want a square on the end and a taper down. It's for legs for something. So I want to keep a square end. They give me a nice piece of wood. I don't want to put it in the chuck and have it mar. And I don't just, when I put it in the chuck, it will be truer than if I pop a center in there. It's like the grain on this wood would force it off into the softer grain, so it won't be running true. So this one is true. You can take a big rubber band and put that around like that, put it in the chuck. That holds really well. Electrical wire, like 14 gauge, 3-wire conduit. It's kind of flat in this way. You can get a piece of that and wrap it around here, squeeze it as hard as you want. It won't leave a mark on it. But what I like to do a lot is I take just some veneer that goes on the edge of a thing. I go around like this, because I do multi-piece work for a couple places, and I've had to do 200 pieces before. So I just make one of these, put a piece of tape on it. Now that can go in the chuck. And there will be no marks on the flat or the square piece of wood. And you know, a lot of this stuff I'm going to be showing you is kind of specialized. You're going to use it, you're not. And see, that will hold it really nice. Anybody want to see that up close? There's always one. Okay, let me find something round and long. Where'd I go for the other chuck for
How about
that?
leather? You ever put leather?
Yeah, I've done
On the
leather,
inside of the joint.
foam pads, all kinds of stuff. And
Yeah.
that veneer I found works the best. Unless it's round, these rubber bands work pretty good. They're big, heavy, thick ones. But the electrical Romex wire, that works extremely well too, and it grabs the wood.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah. Get rid of some of this stuff. How much time we got left, boss?
Let me check.
7:30.
What's that?
It's 7:30.
That doesn't tell me how much time I got left.
You got about 27 minutes.
27, thank you. Till 8 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so Bill was nice enough to bring in his pin drilling jaws. You have to take your chuck jaws off, only 2 of them, and then you can put these on there, and they're drilled out. Is it better on the thing or here? And your pin blank goes in there corner to corner, and then you spin it, and then you can drill your hole very accurately down through the pin blank, right on your lathe.
Or bottle stopper, depending on.
Well, or bottle stop or whatever.
I forget that. It's a good one.
So that's very effective. You can also, like I showed you, put a square blank in a chuck.
Round hole, yeah.
So let's get rid of this and you don't want to drop the chuck on your finger.
Or your toe.
Yeah, when you're putting this on, don't just go up like that. You heard wing, you winged it up and snapped it, or just give it a, snug it up on there. Now those nylon washers they put in here, I don't like those things. They don't hold your chuck good enough. That's not going to grab that. So you the bigger one. Okay, this is a resin cast blank I have inside here.
A resin what?
Resin casted blank. I put a burl in here and cast epoxy resin on it.
PVC tube.
Yeah, so
Leah, you cut off the PVC or you turn it off?
I usually cut it off. Turning it off kills your tool. I just hold it and go against the bandsaw blade and do a slice. I do like 3 slices and just hit it like that and all the pieces pop off. And then I turn it, because cutting through this stuff, it kills your tools really fast. But I wanted to show you, if you have something already round that you're going to cut a little more. Slow that down a little. See, it's wobbling a little bit. So let's say, and when you're putting something in your chuck, you want to hold it here on the end. Don't hold it like this, because 90% of the time you're going to hold it off a little. You'll tighten the chuck down, and then it's wobbling like that. And I came up with this ingenious cure for that. It's pretty cool. You don't want the chuck too tight, but you don't want it too loose either. You turn it on, you take one of your tools, there's a gouge, you turn it upside down, and you just go like that, just went straight. Then you turn it off, and then you go ahead and tighten the chuck. And now that sucker is perfectly true.
Ingenious.
Who's not seen that before? What?
You demonstrate that again?
Yeah. So if you're holding it here, you're almost always going to cock it off a little. So when you turn it on, see it's wobbling. You want to just snug the chuck up, but you can't have it too loose. Turn it on. I got a spindle gouge. I'm turning it upside down, nowhere near the cutting edge, and just slowly lower it, raising the point. See, the chuck is too loose because when I let go, it starts wobbling again. So I just need to snug up that chuck slightly, do it again. It's wobbling slightly. Now it's still straight, put that down, tighten the chuck some more.
Can you do that with any sized piece?
I've done them with pieces that big before.
Is that
Usually if I'm
generally-
going to do that, I will have the one-way center with the opening, the cup, without a point. And I'll just be touching it, and then I'll do that and then crank it up right when it goes true. That's the one-way live center with the ring on there. And you can do that, but I would have the pressure of that open ring on the end, especially if it's a bigger. Something this size, no big deal. But it takes a little practice. If you have it too loose, you do that, it's true, you take it off, it starts wobbling. Tighten the chuck slightly and do it again and snug it up. Okay.
But that trick is only if you already have something rounded out.
Yeah, if it's round with the tendon on it. You could try it with something square. I think I've tried it on a pen blank before like this. And then once it got true enough, I just go up because I know I'm going to be cutting a whole bunch off of this. No big deal. Okay, what's next? Yeah, and to do the PVC, I will have a tenon in the chuck, and then I will cut this just so this fits over it snug, and then I'll try and do that trick to get it true, and then I CA glue the PVC right to the thing, and then I put my wood in here and cast the resin. So I figure why make a square blank out of resin and you're going to cut that off and waste it. It's just throwing money away. Okay, this chuck will open enough so I can insert a pen blank right in there. The corners go in the holes. Go ahead and drill it. Now let's say you want to make a bunch of like knobs or something. You're doing some multi-pieces. So you can take your Jacob's chuck and take the screw that your knob screws on, or bottle stopper screw, or whatever, or your bottle stopper blanks, and you can just put that in your Jacob's chuck and do that. But I found that unless you have the one with the threaded rod and you put a rod in here with the knob, that can come loose unless you're using this all the time. I made this wood one because I had to do a whole bunch of knobs for this house in the Bahamas. And I made a number 2 Morse taper out of wood. How do you do that? You take a Morse taper, you put that there, you glue 2 pieces of wood. You have your blank between centers and you start turning it till it touches up here and down there. Then you can go pop, just give it a little tap, and then I would take my piece of wood and just, with my pre-drilled hole, screw this all the way on. Bring my center up, and turn it on and go ahead and make my knob. Now this blank isn't cut perfectly square, and Wanda drilled a hole in it, so we know how that got bent. Ooh, I want it?
Yeah.
I think it was the table on the drill press. Or the guy with the bandsaw. So that's just another way you can do stuff like that. You can make, what's that?
Can you pass that one around?
Yeah. And there's always many ways to do things. Now, pens, for instance, you can use the pen mandrel which can be used for other things. This is the professional mandrel. You can pull the rod out and bring it in. There's ones that do not do that, and I prefer this over the other one. But I almost never use a mandrel when I'm making a pin. See, this is a different one, and it just screws right onto the headstock. And then the live center goes in there, but you cannot shorten it because this is screwed into that. So you have to put spacers if you're only doing a one-piece pin, or even with a two-piece pin. I use a jam chuck almost exclusively, and I had it and it disappeared. Anybody see it?
Jam chuck?
So it
That's on
bends.
the floor.
It's out of the table.
Oh, that goes in here. Good job on this table there, Stuart. See, I make a jam chuck for pins, and I mark the jaw. This one's number 1. I put a little red on there. So that jaw, I put this in the jaw, the same exact spot I took it out. And if you're going to take a piece out of the chuck with the intention of putting it back in, mark one of the jaws. So you know, I mark number 1, I do 2 lines and an X. This should run perfectly true, which it is. So I take my fen blank bushings, I stick them in my blank, this goes on here, I put my tailstock in, and this is 100% true, 100% stable. It won't be flexing with that rod. I can only do one at a time, but I'd rather have it accurate than trying to go for quantity where some of the sides and parts may not fit right.
It's like 7 millimeter.
Yeah, well, the tube in that other one is 7 millimeter. This is 6 millimeter, 1/4 inch. Yeah, and I've got a couple of these. If I do something to one, just make another one. They're real easy. But if you get it back in the same spot, that's when it works the best. Pans are done. Okay, here is a jig for eggs or spheres. And I didn't make this, or maybe I did. It's just a piece of PVC screwed onto a tenon, cut through. There's a little recess for this. You can put your piece in here, line up your center in the original hole. That will true it up. And then you could come in and cut off the end piece totally round. Then you can take it out and turn around and do the other end if you want to do spheres or eggs and get those nice and rounded. So. We fill out the table in the back.
Well, they put it up on the phone.
Now, your blanks do not need to be put the chuck key back in the same spot every time. That's why I have a magnet. I stick that sucker right there.
When you talk about those chucks, you know, the smaller ones that you got, when you say Cram Supply,
Yeah.
I bought a couple of them from Amazon. They're obviously 1x8.
Yeah.
They're only $64, and they look like the one-ways. The downside is you only get one set of jaws.
Yeah.
But for $64, you know, if you want to spend a lot of money in an
That's
extra
the
chuck.
same size?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great little chuck.
Yeah, it is.
But are there other jaws optional?
I haven't seen it for that one, but the Barracuda jaws fit that, and the other smaller chucks fit it also.
Okay, now, we don't need to start our wood between centers like that all the time. You can put it in like this. One of them one-way centers around with the hole in the top.
Put it on a bias.
Thank you.
On a bias, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So you could actually start your turning like this. Put that right in that hole, and this right in that hole. I'm not. And you could go ahead and turn something like that.
Wing bowls.
Yeah, wing
What is it?
bowls.
What is
It's with the points, you can put them between centers any point you want. There's that, you start with a perfectly square block and you end up with a 3-pointed bowl.
Right.
Did you do that demo?
I did that.
Yeah.
Or a bigger one, yeah.
Yeah,
a bigger
Yeah, I did a 1-inch one. It's so cute.
Yeah.
Nobody will buy it though, I don't know.
I don't understand it.
Yeah. Okay, so this just goes in one of my big chucks, and I got sandpaper on here. And you could put that, crank it up, make a sanding piece on it.
Lee, what is this wood?
Which one?
The one you just had in your hand?
This?
Yes, what is
This
it?
is Norfolk Island pine. Norfolk, not Norfolk. There's only one R in it.
Okay. I think that's from you.
It's not really Norfolk Island pine, it's Dade pine down this area. That's another story.
Oh, that's a whole different tree.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, another thing I do is the little carbide cutters. I will take this is a diamond lap wheel used to sharpen stones on, polished stones. This is 1200 grit. I just stick it right there, crank this up. I'll put a drop of soap right here, 2-sided tape. I'll tape that cutter to my finger and go like that. Turn the lathe on and just run it back and forth like this. Usually runs really true. Must be this lathe. Yeah, on all my other lathes, this was running perfectly true. And then I just, about 5 seconds, go back and forth. It sharpens the whole top of that cutter like a razor blade. It is really sharp. And I know you can just take them and rub them like that too. And I usually wait till there's 4, 5, or 8 of those dull.
And use soap rather than petroleum.
Yeah, because that's a pain in the ass to clean off. Soap, you just go under the water and it cleans it right off. That's what we used to use at the slaughterhouse I worked at, where we had to sharpen our own knives with stones. How much time we got, kid? What's that?
What did you use this for?
That is for making eggs or spears. You mount it in there and you can cut the little nub off the top and sand it, get it all the way done. Okay, moving on. There are many ways to mount your piece to cut the bottom off. And somebody came up with this. This is was called a Kirsten cone. So they're really easy to make. 1/2-inch rod, a collar. This can go right in your Jacob's chuck because you're going to have tailstock support the whole time. This is off of a metal lathe. That'll take a 1/2-inch rod. It's also threaded if you wanted to run a threaded rod through. This one's not. But this goes in here like that. This piece, you make it any contour or size you want. Yeah, I've got a big one I put on when I'm doing like that bowl on the table. If it was thin and fragile, a jam chuck might be too much for it. This will support it. So we take our piece and this has to be small enough to go in the opening, and you run it in, and this piece is right on the bottom. And you bring up your center right in that hole, which you originally started your piece with, and you slide this cone down, and then you loosen the ring, and slide that down just to hold the cone in place. It doesn't need a lot of pressure. This is just to keep it from wobbling. Your security is right here on the bottom. So this would be slid down, and then you retighten it. And when you do this, you can see that is squeezing that. Because if I do a hollow vessel this size or bigger, and it's got an 1/8 thin wall, a jam chuck may destroy the thing if you crank this a little too tight. And that's how you hold it. Now this is one somebody made. They put it on a metal lathe and made a number 2 Morse taper. It's just a 3/4 inch threaded rod. You just have to drill a 3/4 inch hole or slightly bigger that fits on. Make your end piece. And this one is actually, I know I got it out. The 3-inch heads we put on the drill, or even the 1 inch with the sandpaper. You stick that in that hole and just run that down inside on the bottom. And then you just slide this piece into the opening like that, tighten that down, turn the lid off, cut your bottom off. These are really good. I use these quite often. I make different sizes. You go to Home Depot and get a 1/2 inch rod. It used to be like $6. That's 3 feet long.
Is
Make a
that
couple of them.
only good for like vases and hollow form, or just a regular old bowl?
Well, like that bowl on the table. I've got a couple of these pieces that are like that big. I did some big open Norfolk bowls that were 1/4 inch all the way down. And I wanted the pressure holding it in the bottom of the piece, and this just keeps it from wobbling. So it's very, very effective.
So you could use a Jacob's chuck to hold the other end of it.
Yeah, you could just stick a 1/2 inch rod right in the Jacob's chuck. Just put this in there, that'll open the 1/2 inch, put your 1/2 inch rod in, you make the big cone and the wood piece.
Do you have instructions for how to make one of those things?
Well, it's pretty easy to make. I have a bunch of those,
Isn't that relative to who you're talking to? It's easy for you. I don't think it's so easy for me.
hey, I've only been doing this 24 years. I have a bunch of these rings here. I brought 6 or 8. If anybody wants one, they're free. And it'll fit over the 1/2 inch, and you just slide it up. They're here somewhere. And that is one of the best ways for doing hollow vessels and even boxes, but some bowls where a bowl where the lid comes up. If you're doing just a bigger bowl, you just have a jam chuck in the bottom with a pad. That's the way to do that, especially if it's a little bit thicker. You know, like the stuff you make that you carve. Kidding, Lara.
Been nice.
She's getting better and better all the time. As we all are. Okay, this is a bottle stopper drive made out of a lamp rod that you threw. That just screws on. That was just a big nut. And I have a couple 1-inch nuts that screw on the lathe if anybody wants one. I've got a bunch of these. Usually you need a big washer as a spacer where you got to make the hole bigger in the bottom. That's just another way you could do that. This is a commercial bottle stopper jig. It's got the same thread as the bottle stopper metal inserts. You just screw that on, drill your hole. It's better if you tap it also so it screws on easy. You can really force it on, but once you get your piece turned, sometimes it's about impossible to get back off. But if you thread it, I mean, you can buy a 3/8 tap really easy at Home Depot or somewhere. Okay, this is a homemade multi-axis chuck. You screw your piece of wood on, use your center, turn it, loosen this, angle it over, tighten that, put the center back on. You can do multi-axis turning with this. And face plates are really good. Like just a big bowl, I have a 19 3/4 inch face plate for my big lathe. I'll screw that on and just put that bowl against this pad. I drew lines on here to kind of center it, but when you put that in a hole and then twist it against each other, as you should with all jam chucks, it trues it up some more. And that works out really good. Does anybody actually even want this thing?
That's kind of cool.
I've had it and I never used it. Now another thing you can do, which I had done back in the day, you have a faceplate like this with drill holes, and then you take your vase, and then you have a big ring like this one that fits over, you know, if this was a different shape, it'd be better, like this one. Let's say I was making this with no bottom on it to fit in a cradle, so it's going to be rounded. I would put this on there, have this ring that fits down over it, but bigger with holes, and you have big bolts going down, 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 and it's mounted like that, and you spin it, and you're able to cut your end off completely like that. There's many, many, many ways to do it. It's easier just to do it with a jam chuck and then get it down and then hand round it over. But that's one of the things I made before. So you said you want this?
No, I just said it was really cool.
Okay. You take it home and don't take up space in my studio.
It's okay, yeah, you got more space than me.
Okay, then there's vacuum chucks, which I didn't bring. This is a homemade vacuum chuck somebody made. They threaded it to fit on here. There was a foam pad that's been burned off because too much pressure or something. Then you have a vacuum pump on a bearing that comes through here. When you put your piece up and you turn the vacuum pump on, it pulls over 25 pounds of pressure. Is that the right phrase?
Oh, right, 20 PSIs.
And you can literally pull this as hard as you can. It's not coming off of it. You still should use the live center every time, as much as you possibly can, till you get a little nub, and then take that away and cut the bottom. It's just safe. Now, let's say I got this burl, a lot bigger than this one, and I want to dish out a bowl here, and a bowl here, and a bowl here, where I need to remount this 3 different places. I can, and I've done this on my big faceplate piece of plywood. I'll put it where I want it first. I usually have this screwed on the lathe, bring the center up to where my center is going to be, and then I'll take some chains with pads and screw that down, screw wherever I need chains, and then take some blocks of wood and screw it on the side so this thing can't move. And then I'll cut my little bowl in the center and take it off and move it over, chain it again, and cut my bowl over here. And it can be a separate one or overlapping where you have this curved line in between. You do about 4 or 5 of them on a big one, it's spectacular.
You don't trust double-sided tape?
Not for anything like that.
Not
No.
for anything like that?
For some stuff, yeah. Like if you're doing a platter, double-sided tape is fine. You can use hot glue too. Glue it up.
This got a lot of surface on the back, this piece. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yeah, and that's if this is already perfect and flat and
Right.
true. Now, if you're way off center, you need to add some weight over here.
That's what you want.
Like screw some pieces of metal with thing, just to even up the weight, make it more balanced while you're cutting your bowl in there. And again, have this on your piece, cut as much as you can before you take it away and cut the center out. Just safer. Now there was one time I had our bottle brush trees that grow here are wonderful. I just brought Dave a few because I owed him a favor. And
When was that?
he's going to make mushrooms, magic mushrooms.
Where'd you get
I
that
had-
bottle brush from?
What's that?
So where'd you get that bottle brush from?
This came from
Jim
right
Harris.
around the corner from his house.
And you got some from me too.
Yeah, I got some from her too. And Hurricane Wilma came through where I lived in Coconut Creek. Our development had 120 bottle brush trees, and all of them have burls all over them. I filled the bed of my pickup about that big with just these burls. Some were big. But I had a piece with 2 burls about this size, and the branch in between was this long and a 1/4 inch in diameter, maybe 5/16, and it kind of went down, over, and down. So I put a piece of wood on a faceplate, a square piece, and I built 2 sides up and a top, and I cut a notch out just past the center, and then I made it tall enough where this fit in, where the bottom of my burrow was touching this top piece like that, where I lined up the center, and I glued it down. And then I had the bottom cut flat because I was leaving all this as the base. So then I put drywall screws in at an angle just wedged up against here and a couple little chains. And I turned this goblet, natural edge with the bark on the top. I had to carve a little underneath, but I had to make this box. It took longer to do that than it did to turn the piece. But I sold it for $200. Yeah, it was really good. Now, when you're doing something like a pepper mill, and you make a tenon, you drill your hole, it's best to remount it on the lathe on those holes. Don't take for granted that the chuck holding that cause your drill bit to go in straight. They almost always wander due to a dull drill bit, wood grain. So once you have it drilled, you should remount it between centers on the holes. This is a pepper mill jam chuck. The 1 5/8 holes, this one fits over it. And you just bring your center up into that hole, turn it on, releasing the thing. And then you cut the outside to the holes and everything's true. And I could even turn it around this way because that next step is for this size, the 1 16th. And then the little tenon here is for the little hole in the top, the kind with that. Now the other style of pepper mills, I take that chuck with the little jaws and the 7/8 hole you put in there, you close those jaws, it fits over it. The chucks, you can drill a hole and stick it in and expand it out. That works really well too. From pepper mills to crush grind, that's how I do that. How much time we got left?
47 seconds.
47?
You're over.
Hey, welcome back, Jerry. Gary?
Mark, whoever you.
He changed his name when he goes to Colorado.
Yeah. Okay, another way you can do it is you have a jam chuck with a cup. You can put your tennis ball over there. It's a fragile piece. Put it there on your center and spin it and cut the bottom off. I've seen people do that.
Can you put the ball just up against the chuck?
Yeah, that would work too. Just
That's what I,
put that ball right there. You have to pay attention and make sure you got the proper pressure when you're doing that, because you do something wrong. You don't want to be cutting out here, just a little nub up here by the center. So unless we have to do some more, we're out of time?
yeah.
Time's up.
Okay, anybody learn anything new?
Yeah. Great job.
And if anybody wants some of these, come up and see me. There's probably enough for 10 sets.